Virgin girl sold to a cold millionaire CEO. On their wedding night, the unthinkable happened. The papers are signed. She's yours now. The words slice through the mahogany-paneled office like a transaction completing, which is exactly what this is. A transaction. A sale. A virgin bride exchanged for $5 million in debt forgiveness. Remember our agreement, Mr. Kane. She remains untouched until the wedding night. That was your specific requirement. I remember my requirements, Morrison. I drafted them myself. The voice from behind the massive desk is carved from ice and indifference. Nikolai Kane doesn't even look up from his contracts, as if purchasing a human being is just another Tuesday afternoon acquisition. Send her to the penthouse. The staff will prepare her. She has a name, you know. Iris. Iris Meadows. I'm aware of her name. I'm also aware of her father's gambling debts, her mother's medical bills, and exactly how desperate your family was when you came begging for my help. Would you prefer I call off the arrangement? No, sir. The arrangement stands. Let me tell you about the most disturbing and ultimately transformative story I've ever encountered in my years of chronicling the lives of the wealthy and the desperate. This isn't a fairy tale, though it starts like one, a virgin sold to a beast. But what happened on that wedding night? What transpired in the darkness between two strangers bound by debt and desperation changed everything we thought we knew about love, sacrifice, and the price of a human soul. Picture this scene. A 21-year-old girl standing in a wedding dress that costs more than her family's house, looking at herself in a mirror that reflects back a stranger. Iris Meadows, who 6 weeks ago was studying library science at community college, is now about to become Mrs. Nikolai Kane. Not because of love, not because of choice, but because her father owes the kind of money that gets people killed, and Nikolai Kane made an offer that couldn't be refused. But before you judge, before you think you know where this story goes, let me tell you something about that wedding night. Because what happened in that penthouse bedroom wasn't what anyone expected. Not Morrison, who sold his niece to save his brother. Not Iris, who expected to be violated by a monster. And certainly not Nikolai Kane, who thought he was purchasing something simple and transactional. What happened was impossible. What happened was unthinkable. What happened changed the course of multiple lives in ways that still ripple through Chicago society today. 6 weeks before that wedding night, Iris Meadows was nobody special. She worked part-time at a bookstore, attended night classes, and lived in a studio apartment with a radiator that clanged like a ghost in chains. Her biggest worry was whether she could afford both textbooks and food this month. Her wildest dream was maybe graduating without too much debt and finding a job at a nice library somewhere quiet. Iris, honey, you need to come home. Her mother's voice on the phone that Tuesday morning was wrong. Too high, too thin, stretched like a wire about to snap. Mom? What's wrong? Just come home. Please. Right now. I have class in an hour. Skip it. This is important. The 2-hour bus ride to her parents' house in Cicero felt like crossing into another country. From her small but safe world into something that smelled like danger and desperation. Her childhood home looked the same from the outside. Faded blue siding, garden gnomes her mother collected, the basketball hoop where her brother used to practice before he died in Afghanistan. But inside, the air was thick with the kind of tension that precedes disasters. Her father sat at the kitchen table, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the month since she'd seen him. Uncle Morrison stood by the window, expensive suit out of place in their modest kitchen. And a third man, one she didn't recognize, sat in her mother's chair like he owned it. Iris. Her father couldn't meet her eyes. I'm so sorry. Sorry for what? Dad, what's going on? Your father has been gambling, Uncle Morrison said, his voice carefully neutral. He owes Mr. Kane here $5 million. $5 million. Iris felt the floor tilt. That's impossible. How could you possibly? It started small, her father said, still staring at the table. Your mother's treatments, they weren't covered by insurance. I thought I could win enough to pay for them. But I kept losing, so I kept borrowing, and the interest. Compound interest is a beautiful thing, the stranger said. His voice was deep, controlled, utterly without emotion. When you're the one collecting it. This was her first look at Nikolai Kane. 32 years old, built like someone who'd learned to fight before he learned to talk, with eyes the color of winter storms. He was handsome in the way that predators are beautiful, sleek, dangerous, designed to hunt. We don't have $5 million, Iris said unnecessarily. No, Nikolai agreed. You don't. Which is why your uncle came to me with a proposition. What kind of proposition? The kind where everyone gets what they need. Your father's debt is forgiven. Your mother gets her treatments at the best oncology center in the country. And I get what? You. The word hung in the air like a blade. Excuse me. A wife. I need a wife. Your uncle suggested you might be suitable. Suitable. Iris turned to Morrison. You're selling me? Your own niece. It's not a sale, Morrison said quickly. It's a marriage. A real, legal marriage. That I don't get a choice in. You have a choice, Nikolai said. You can say no. Your father will default on his debt. I'll take everything. This house, his business, his car. Your mother will lose her treatment. Your father will likely end up in prison for fraud. He used fake collateral for the loans. But yes, you have a choice. That's not a choice. That's extortion. That's business. Iris looked at her parents. Her mother was crying silently. Her father still wouldn't look at her. Why me? She asked Nikolai. You could have anyone. Why would you want someone who's being forced? Because forced is clean. No emotions, no expectations, no complications. I need a wife for business reasons. Someone who won't expect love or romance or any of that nonsense. Someone who understands this is a transaction. And if I refuse to cooperate, define cooperate. You know what I mean. Sex. You're asking about sex. He said it like he was saying spreadsheet or quarterly report. That's negotiable. I have one specific requirement for the wedding night. After that, what happens between us is something we can discuss like civilized people. What requirement? You'll find out on our wedding night. I want to know now. No. Then no deal. Iris. Her father finally spoke, looking up with eyes red from crying or drinking or both. Please. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. And now I'm the solution? You're the only solution, Morrison said. Mr. Kane was very specific. He wants you. Why? Because you're perfect, Nikolai said, standing. He moved like water, all controlled power and dangerous grace. 21 years old, virgin, no social media presence, no complicated past. You're a blank slate. How do you know I'm a virgin? I know everything worth knowing about you, Iris Meadows. Your grades, your work history, your complete lack of romantic experience. You've never even been kissed, have you? Heat flooded her face. That's none of your business. It's about to be very much my business. You're disgusting. I'm practical. And I'm offering you a solution to your family's destruction. $5 million in debt forgiveness, the best medical care for your mother, and a lifestyle you've never imagined. All you have to do is marry me. All I have to do is sell myself. We all sell ourselves, Iris. Some of us just get better prices. He dropped a card on the table. You have 24 hours to decide. If you agree, the wedding is in 6 weeks. That gives you time to adjust to the idea. 6 weeks. I have a merger that requires me to be married. The timeline is non-negotiable. Everything about this is insane. Yes, he agreed. It is. 24 hours, Iris. Choose wisely. He left, taking all the oxygen in the room with him. Iris sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. How could you? She asked, not sure which family member she was addressing. We're desperate, her mother said softly. The cancer, it's getting worse. Without treatment, I have maybe 3 months. There has to be another way. There isn't, Morrison said. I've explored every option. Nikolai Kane is the only one willing to forgive this level of debt. In exchange for a human being. In exchange for a marriage. It's not the same thing, isn't it? That night, Iris researched Nikolai Kane. Self-made millionaire, though this self-made part was questionable. Rumors of connections to organized crime, though nothing proven. A string of business acquisitions that left competitors destroyed. No social media, no public relationships, no evidence of any personal life at all. He was a ghost with a bank account, a cipher in a suit. And in 24 hours, she had to decide whether to marry him. Comment below if you've ever faced an impossible choice between your freedom and your family's survival. Because that's exactly where Iris Meadows found herself, and the decision she made would lead to the most unexpected wedding night in history. She said yes, of course. What choice did she really have? Watch her mother die? See her father imprisoned? Lose everything and everyone she loved to save herself? I'll do it, she told Morrison the next day. But I have conditions. You're not really in a position to negotiate. Neither is Mr. Kane, apparently, or he wouldn't need to buy a wife. Morrison smiled slightly. What conditions? I want everything in writing. The debt forgiveness, my mother's treatment, protection for my father. And I want to know what happens after the wedding. How long does this arrangement last? Mr. Kane suggested a 2-year minimum. After that, if either party wants out, divorce proceedings can begin. 2 years. 2 years of her life sold to a stranger. Fine. But I want it all legal and binding. Mr. Kane has already had the contracts drawn up. Of course he had. The man probably had contracts for his contracts. The 6 weeks that followed were a surreal preparation for a life Iris never wanted. Nikolai sent professionals to transform her. A stylist who threw out her entire wardrobe and replaced it with clothes that cost more than her annual tuition. A beautician who shaped her eyebrows and taught her about skincare routines that required 45 minutes twice a day. A deportment coach who taught her how to walk, sit, and hold herself like someone who belonged in Nikolai's world. You're naturally graceful, the coach said. That's good. Mr. Kane despises clumsiness. What else does he despise? Tardiness, excessive emotion, poor grammar, and small talk. Sounds charming. He's not paying for charming. He's paying for appropriate. Iris saw Nikolai exactly 3 times during those 6 weeks. Once to sign papers. Once for a fitting where he stood in the corner and approved or rejected wedding dress options with single words. And once, unexpectedly, at the hospital where her mother was receiving treatment. What are you doing here? Iris asked, finding him in her mother's room. Ensuring my investment is protected. Your mother's responding well to treatment. She's not an investment. She's a person. Everything is an investment, Iris. Some just have better returns than others. Is that what I am? An investment? You're a solution to a problem. What problem? That's not your concern. I'm marrying you. Everything about you is my concern. He looked at her then, really looked at her for the first time since that day in her parents' kitchen. You're getting bold. I'm getting angry. You're buying me like property. The least you can do is tell me why. My grandfather's will requires me to be married by my 33rd birthday to inherit his company. I turned 33 in 2 months. So this is about money. Everything is about money. That's sad. That's reality. Why not marry someone you actually like? Because liking leads to loving, and loving leads to vulnerability. I prefer transactions. Clean, simple, with clear terms. And I'm clean and simple? You're uncomplicated. That's valuable. I'm also a human being with feelings. Feelings weren't part of our agreement. Feelings can't be contracted away. Watch me try. He left then, and Iris was left staring at her sleeping mother, wondering what kind of man she'd agreed to marry. Cold, certainly. Calculating, definitely. But there was something else, something in the way he'd made sure her mother had the best room, the best doctors, the best care. Something that suggested Nikolai Kane might be more than just the monster he appeared to be. Or maybe that was just wishful thinking from a girl about to marry a stranger. The wedding day arrived with the inevitability of a storm that had been building for 6 weeks. Iris stood in a hotel suite that cost more per night than she used to make in a month, being dressed by strangers in a gown that felt like wearing a very expensive prison. You look beautiful, her mother said from the chair where she sat, still weak from chemo but determined to attend. I look like someone else. You look like a bride. I look like a transaction. Iris, her mother's voice was pained. This is my fault. If I wasn't sick, this is Dad's fault. He's the one who gambled. He did it for me. He did it for the thrill. The money was just an excuse. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Mom. But here we are. The ceremony was small. Just family, Nikolai's lawyers, and a few business associates who needed to witness that the marriage was real. Iris walked down the aisle of the hotel's chapel on her uncle's arm, each step feeling like walking toward her own execution. Nikolai waited at the altar looking devastating in his tuxedo, like the devil dressed for dinner. He watched her approach with those storm-colored eyes, his expression unreadable. You look appropriate, he said when she reached him. You look rich, she replied. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. Let's get this over with. The ceremony was brief and bloodless. They exchanged vows that meant nothing, rings that felt like handcuffs, and a kiss so brief it barely qualified as contact. And just like that, Iris Meadows became Iris Kane. The reception was torture. Strangers congratulating her on capturing Chicago's most eligible bachelor. Business associates of Nikolai's making jokes about him finally being domesticated. Her parents trying to pretend this was a real wedding and not a business transaction. How does it feel to be Mrs. Kane? Someone asked. Like wearing a costume that doesn't fit. Iris replied before she could stop herself. Nikolai appeared at her elbow. My wife has a unique sense of humor, he said smoothly. If you'll excuse us. He guided her to a quiet corner, his hand on her lower back feeling like a brand through the silk of her dress. Try to at least pretend you're happy, he said quietly. I'm not an actress. You are tonight. Smile, play the part, and in a few hours, this will be over. And then what? We go to your penthouse and you, what? Claim your purchase. We go to the penthouse and have a conversation about expectations. I want to know what happens tonight. What's this requirement you mentioned? You'll find out soon enough. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of forced smiles, and champagne Iris didn't drink because she wanted to be completely sober for whatever came next. Finally, mercifully, it was time to leave. The ride to Nikolai's penthouse was silent. Iris stared out the window at the Chicago skyline, trying not to think about what was about to happen. She was a virgin who'd just married a stranger, heading to his bed because her father couldn't stop gambling and her mother needed treatment. It was like something out of a Victorian novel, except with better clothes and worse morals. The penthouse was exactly what she'd expected. Massive, modern, cold. All glass and steel and surfaces that looked like they'd never been touched by human hands. It felt like a museum, not a home. Your room is through there, Nikolai said, pointing to a hallway. My room? You didn't think we'd be sharing? I don't know what I thought. Your belongings have already been moved in. You'll find everything you need. What about tonight? The requirement. Get changed into something comfortable. Then come to the living room. We need to talk. Iris found her room, a suite bigger than her entire former apartment, decorated in soft grays and whites. Her clothes had been hung in a closet that could house a family. She changed out of the wedding dress into pajamas that someone had bought for her, silk things that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to be. When she returned to the living room, Nikolai had also changed, now wearing dark pants and a sweater that made him look almost human. He was pouring whiskey at a bar that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Drink. I don't drink. Tonight might be an exception. Why? What are you planning to do to me? He turned to look at her, and for the first time, she saw something that might have been vulnerability in his eyes. Nothing. I'm planning to do absolutely nothing to you. What? That's the requirement, Iris. The unthinkable thing that happens on our wedding night. Nothing. No consummation, no touching, no traditional wedding night activities. I don't understand. Sit down. This is going to take some explanation. She sat on the couch, as far from him as possible. He remained standing, whiskey in hand, looking out at the city lights. I don't do intimacy, he said finally. Physical or emotional. I don't do connection or vulnerability or any of the things that typically happen between husbands and wives. Then why get married? I told you. My grandfather's will. No, I mean why the virgin requirement? Why me specifically? Because a virgin wouldn't have expectations. Someone experienced would expect things. Physical things. You don't know what you're missing, so you won't miss it. That's the most depressing thing I've ever heard. It's practical. It's sad. You're so afraid of human connection that you bought a virgin wife just to avoid the possibility of intimacy. I didn't buy you. I forgave your father's debt in exchange for a marriage contract. Semantics. Important semantics. So what? We just live here like roommates for 2 years. Essentially, yes. You'll accompany me to public events, play the role of devoted wife when necessary, and otherwise live your life as you choose. You can return to school, work, whatever you want. As long as you're discreet and don't embarrass me publicly. And privately? Privately, we maintain separate lives. Separate rooms, separate schedules. We intersect only when necessary. That's not a marriage. That's a performance. All marriages are performances. Ours is just more honest about it. Iris stared at him. This beautiful, broken man who was so terrified of feeling that he'd orchestrated an entire marriage to avoid it. What happened to you? Excuse me. Something happened to make you this way. People aren't born this cold. Some are. You weren't. There's something underneath all this ice. I saw it at the hospital with my mother. You care, you just don't want to. What I want is irrelevant. This is what I am. This is what you choose to be. Same thing. It's really not. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their strange arrangement settling between them. So that's it? Iris asked. We just exist near each other for 2 years. Unless you prefer traditional marriage arrangements. I'm capable of performing if necessary. Performing. You make sex sound like a board meeting. Most things in life are transactions, including sex. Have you ever been in love? No. Ever wanted to be? No. That's genuinely sad. That's genuinely none of your business. I'm your wife. Everything about you is now my business. You're my wife on paper. That doesn't give you access to my thoughts or feelings. Do you have feelings? Everyone has feelings. I just choose not to indulge them. That sounds exhausting. It's efficient. It's lonely. I prefer solitude. No one prefers solitude. Some people just get so used to it they mistake it for preference. He looked at her sharply. Don't try to psychoanalyze me, Iris. You're here for a purpose, and that purpose isn't to fix me. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to understand you. Why? Because I'm going to be living with you for 2 years. I'd like to know what I'm dealing with. You're dealing with a man who will honor his contracts. Your father's debt is forgiven, your mother is getting treatment, and you have a lifestyle most people dream of. That's all you need to know. What about what you need? I need a wife on paper, which I now have. Nothing else. Nothing else. But the way he said it, the way he wouldn't meet her eyes, told Iris that Nikolai Kane needed much more than he was willing to admit. The question was whether 2 years would be enough time to find out what. Fine, she said, standing. We'll do this your way. Separate lives, public performance, private distance. But I have conditions. You already negotiated your conditions. That was before I knew what this really was. Now I have new ones. Such as, I want to finish school. You'll pay for it. Done. I want to work. Something meaningful, not just playing trophy wife. As long as it doesn't interfere with required appearances. And I want honesty. If we're going to live this strange half-life together, the least we can do is be honest with each other. About what? Everything. If you're angry, say it. If you need something, ask for it. If this arrangement isn't working, we discuss it. No games, no manipulation, just truth. Truth is dangerous. Lies are worse. He considered this, swirling his whiskey. Fine. Honesty. But that goes both ways. I've got nothing to hide. Everyone has something to hide. What are you hiding? That's not honesty. That's interrogation. Fair point. They stood there, two strangers who just promised to spend 2 years in the same space without ever really touching, without ever really connecting. It should have felt like prison. Instead, it felt like possibility. One more thing, Iris said. The virgin thing. That's not permanent. What do you mean? I mean, I'm 21 years old. I'm not planning to stay a virgin forever just because you're afraid of intimacy. If I meet someone, if I develop feelings for someone else during our arrangement. No. The word came out sharp, violent almost. No. That's not acceptable. You're my wife. Legally and publicly. But not really. You just said so yourself. Legally is really enough. You want to have affairs after the divorce, fine. But during our marriage, you remain faithful. Faithful to what? We're not even going to touch each other. Faithful to the contract. The contract doesn't specify celibacy. It does now. You can't just add clauses after I've signed. Then consider it a personal request. Why do you care? If this is just business, why does it matter what I do with my body? Something flashed in his eyes, possession, jealousy, something human and hot that he quickly suppressed. Because appearances matter. A wife having affairs reflects poorly on the husband. Only if people know. People always know. You're being unreasonable. I'm being practical. You're being hypocritical. What about you? Are you planning to remain celibate for 2 years? Yes. The simple answer surprised her. Really? I haven't been with anyone in 3 years. 2 more won't matter. 3 years? What? That's not your concern. Everything about you is my concern, remember? You just agreed to honesty. Honestly, it's none of your business. Was it someone special? Someone who hurt you. There's never been anyone special. That's the point. Then why 3 years of celibacy? Because sex, like everything else, is a transaction. And I got tired of the cost. The cost. Emotional expectations. Clingy attachments. Drama. Sex is never just sex, no matter what people claim. There's always a cost. That's the saddest thing you've said yet. That's the truest thing I've said yet. They're not mutually exclusive. He almost smiled at that. Almost. Go to bed, Iris. It's been a long day. Is that an order? It's a suggestion. From my husband or my owner? There's a difference? There should be. In our case, probably not. She turned to go, then stopped. Nikolai. Yes. What you said about the unthinkable thing happening tonight. You were wrong. How so? The unthinkable thing isn't that nothing happened. The unthinkable thing is that you're so broken you've arranged an entire marriage to avoid healing. She left before he could respond, retreating to her beautiful prison of a room. She could hear him in the living room, pouring another drink, probably staring at the city lights and convincing himself that loneliness was a choice rather than a sentence. Her wedding night. She'd imagined it differently, back when she believed in love and choice and fairy tales. She'd imagined someone who loved her, who wanted her, who saw her as more than a solution to a problem. Instead, she had Nikolai Kane, a man so frozen he'd arranged a marriage just to avoid the possibility of melting. But here's the thing about ice. It might seem impenetrable, but apply enough consistent warmth, and eventually, inevitably, it begins to crack. Comment below if you've ever found yourself in an arrangement that was supposed to be simple, but became impossibly complicated. Because that's what was about to happen to Iris and Nikolai Kane, though neither of them knew it yet. The first week of marriage was a study in careful avoidance. They moved through the penthouse like ghosts, aware of each other, but never quite manifesting in the same space at the same time. Iris would hear Nikolai leave at 5 a.m. for the gym. He'd return as she was having breakfast, shower while she dressed, leave for work before she emerged. In the evening, he'd work in his office while she studied in her room. They were married strangers living parallel lives in a very expensive cage. How's married life? Melanie asked when they met for coffee. Melanie was Iris's only real friend, the one person she'd told the truth to about the arrangement. Weird. We barely see each other. That's probably for the best, considering. Considering what? Considering you're attracted to him. I am not. Iris, you've described him to me 5 times. His eyes, his hands, the way he moves. You're attracted. He's objectively handsome. That's just observation. And you're objectively in denial. Even if I was attracted, which I'm not, it doesn't matter. He's made it very clear this is purely business. Men say a lot of things they don't mean. Not Nikolai. He means everything. That's part of the problem. Or part of the solution. What does that mean? It means a man who's that controlled is either truly cold, or he's controlling something that would consume him if he let it loose. You've been reading too many romance novels. And you've been living in one. Virgin Bride, Cold CEO, Forced Marriage? This is literally a book I read last month. How did it end? They fell in love and had lots of athletic sex. That's not happening here. Not with that attitude. But Melanie didn't understand. She hadn't seen the emptiness in Nikolai's eyes, hadn't felt the arctic distance he maintained. This wasn't a romance novel. This was a business arrangement between a desperate girl and a broken man. The first crack in their careful avoidance came 2 weeks into the marriage. Iris woke at 2 a.m. to sounds from the living room. Not normal sounds, something between a gasp and a groan, like someone in pain. She found Nikolai on the couch, shirtless and sweating, clearly in the grip of a nightmare. His face was contorted, his hands clenched, and he was speaking in a language she didn't recognize. Russian, maybe. Nikolai, she said softly, not wanting to startle him. He didn't wake. Nikolai, she said louder, reaching out to touch his shoulder. The moment her hand made contact, his eyes flew open and his hand caught her wrist in a grip that bordered on painful. Don't, he said, his voice raw. You were having a nightmare. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're shaking. He seemed to realize he was still holding her wrist and released it abruptly. Go back to bed. What were you dreaming about? Nothing. You were speaking Russian. You don't know it was Russian. What else would it be? Go back to bed, Iris. No. 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 You're clearly upset. I'm not leaving you alone like this. I've been alone for years. I'm fine. You're not fine. Fine people don't have nightmares that leave them shaking. Everyone has nightmares. About what? The past. What about your past? It's not your concern. We agreed on honesty. We agreed on honesty about the present. The past affects the present. Not if you don't let it. That's not how trauma works. I'm not traumatized. No, you're just a perfectly healthy person who has nightmares in Russian and arranged a marriage to avoid intimacy. He stood abruptly, putting distance between them. In the dim light, she could see scars on his chest and back, old ones, faded but visible. They looked like, but no, that couldn't be right. Are those from? Go to bed, Iris. Please. The please stopped her. He never said please. Never asked for anything. The fact that he was asking now, that he was allowing that much vulnerability, made her back off. Okay, but if you need. I don't need anything. Everyone needs something. Go. She went, but she didn't sleep. She lay in her bed thinking about those scars, about the nightmare, about the man she'd married who was so much more damaged than she'd realized. The next morning, he was gone before she woke. But on the kitchen counter was a note in his precise handwriting. Thank you for your concern. It won't happen again. But it did happen again. 3 nights later, then a week after that. Each time, Iris would find him twisted in nightmare, speaking Russian, fighting invisible demons. Each time, she'd wake him carefully, weather his initial anger, and sit with him until the shaking stopped. And each time, he'd leave a note the next morning. Never apologizing, never explaining, just acknowledging. You need help, she told him after the 4th episode. I need sleep. You need therapy. I need you to stop psychoanalyzing me. I need you to stop pretending you're fine. We all need things we can't have. But the nightmares weren't the only crack in Nikolai's armor. There were moments, brief, fleeting, where she caught him looking at her with something that wasn't cold distance. When she laughed at something on TV, when she danced while cooking, when she sat curled up with a book, completely absorbed. He'd watch her with an expression that looked almost like longing before he caught himself and looked away. Part 2. The first public event they had to attend as a married couple came 1 month into their arrangement. A charity gala for the hospital where Iris's mother was being treated. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Wear the blue dress, Nikolai said, barely looking up from his laptop as Iris emerged from her room. The one with the longer sleeves. Why that one? It's appropriate for the crowd. Conservative enough for the old money, expensive enough for the new. You mean it makes me look like I belong to you? You do belong to me. For the next 23 months anyway. 22 months and 3 weeks, but who's counting? He looked up then, and she caught something that might have been amusement in his eyes. You are, apparently. Wouldn't you be? No, I don't count down to endings. It makes the present feel temporary. The present is temporary. That's literally what present means, the temporary moment between past and future. That's very philosophical for someone getting dressed for a party. That's very deflective for someone avoiding the point. What point? That you don't want this to end either. I don't want anything. Want implies emotion. Right? I forgot. You're a robot. I prefer emotionally efficient. I prefer honest, and that's not it. She went back to her room to change into the blue dress, but not before catching his reflection in the window. He was watching her leave with that look again. The one that suggested Nikolai Kane was far from the emotionless machine he pretended to be. The gala was held at the Four Seasons. The ballroom transformed into what looked like a winter wonderland despite it being September. Ice sculptures, white roses, everything draped in silver and crystal. It was beautiful in that cold, expensive way that made Iris feel like she was trespassing. Smile, Nikolai murmured as they entered, his hand on her lower back. You look like you're going to your execution. Or not. It's a party, not a death sentence. With your friends? What's the difference? They're not my friends. They're business associates. Do you have any actual friends? No. That's sad. That's simple. Friends are liabilities. Friends are support systems. I don't need support. Everyone needs support. Smile, Iris. People are watching. She smiled, the fake one she'd been practicing in the mirror. The one that said, I'm totally in love with my husband and not at all dying inside. Nikolai, a woman's voice, sultry and amused. I heard you got married, but I didn't believe it. The woman approaching them was everything Iris wasn't. Tall, sophisticated, wearing a dress that was barely there and making it look classy. She moved like water, all flowing confidence and predatory grace. Natasha, Nikolai said, his voice cooling several degrees. I didn't know you were back in Chicago. Just returned from Milan. Fashion Week, you know. She turned to Iris with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You must be the new Mrs. Kane. How unexpected. Unexpected how? Iris asked, finding her spine. Oh, just that Nikolai always swore he'd never marry. What changed your mind, darling? This last was directed at Nikolai with a familiarity that made Iris's stomach clench. Circumstances change, Nikolai said flatly. Indeed they do. Natasha's eyes traveled over Iris like she was cataloging flaws. She's very young. She's standing right here, Iris said. And she can't hear you. Of course, dear. I didn't mean to be rude. It's just surprising. Nikolai usually prefers women with more experience. The implication hung in the air like a challenge. This woman had clearly been one of those experienced women. She'd been with Nikolai, touched him, knew what he looked like when he wasn't wearing his armor of expensive suits and cold distance. Experience is overrated, Iris said, surprising herself with her boldness. Sometimes fresh perspective is more valuable than old habits. Natasha's eyes narrowed. Fresh? Yes, you certainly are that. We should circulate, Nikolai said, his hand tightening slightly on Iris's back. Enjoy your evening, Natasha. Oh, I'm sure I will. Your wife is illuminating. As they walked away, Iris could feel Natasha's eyes following them. Old girlfriend? Iris asked quietly. No. Old something though. Old mistake. Recent mistake? 3 years ago. Is she why you stopped? She's one of many reasons. What did she do? What they all do? Wanted more than I could give. What did she want? Everything. The ring, the status, the fairy tale. And you gave her nothing? I gave her what I could. It wasn't enough. It never is when someone loves you and you don't love them back. He stopped walking, turning to look at her. How would you know? You've never been in love. No, but I've watched enough people who were. My parents, before my dad's gambling destroyed them. They loved each other completely. It's beautiful when it's mutual and horrible when it's not. Love is always horrible. It just takes longer to reveal itself when it's mutual. You really believe that? I know that. Based on what? Your vast experience with love you've never felt. Based on observation. Love makes people weak, desperate, irrational. Look at your father. He loved your mother enough to destroy everything trying to save her. That's not love's fault. That's addiction's fault. Love is addiction, just a socially acceptable one. Before Iris could respond, they were interrupted by another couple, an older man with silver hair and a woman who looked like she'd been preserved in amber at 40. Nikolai, you devil, the man boomed. Married without even telling us. It was a private affair, Jeffrey. Everything with you is private. But this beauty deserves to be shown off. He took Iris's hand, kissing it in an old-fashioned gesture that made her uncomfortable. Jeffrey Ashton, my dear. This is my wife, Vivian. Iris, she managed. Where did Nikolai find you? Vivian asked, her tone suggesting she really wanted to know which escort service. At a library, Iris said truthfully. I work with rare books. How? Quaint, Vivian said, making quaint sound like a disease. My wife has a master's in library science, Nikolai said suddenly. She's one of the youngest rare book specialists in the city. Iris looked at him in surprise. She didn't have a master's. She was still finishing her bachelor's. But the pride in his voice, fake though it might be, made something warm bloom in her chest. Education and beauty, Jeffrey said. You're a lucky man, Nikolai. I'm aware. The evening continued like that, conversation after conversation, where people tried to figure out how someone like Iris had captured Nikolai Kane. The women were catty, the men were condescending, and through it all, Nikolai played the part of devoted husband with a conviction that would have fooled anyone who didn't know the truth. He kept his hand on her back, guiding her through the crowd. He brought her drinks without being asked, remembering she preferred juice to champagne. He introduced her with something approaching pride, defending her against every subtle insult and backhanded compliment. You're good at this, Iris said during a brief moment alone. At what? Pretending to care. Who says I'm pretending? You did. Repeatedly. This is all performance, remember? The performance requires authenticity to be believable. That's a lot of words to avoid saying you actually care. I care about the success of our arrangement. You care about me. You're part of the arrangement. I'm a person. You're my wife. On paper. Paper is all that matters in my world. But even as he said it, his hand was gentle on her back, his thumb tracing small circles that sent shivers down her spine. For someone who claimed not to do intimacy, He was very good at these small touches that felt like promises. "I need air," Iris said suddenly, the weight of all the pretending making it hard to breathe. "Come on." He led her out to a balcony that overlooked Lake Michigan. The September air was cool, autumn already creeping in at the edges. Iris gulped it gratefully, letting it wash away the suffocating atmosphere of the ballroom. "They're horrible," she said. "They're necessary." "For what?" "Business." "Is everything about business with you?" "Yes. Even this." She gestured between them. "Even us. Especially us." "That's depressing. That's practical. You know what I think? I rarely care what anyone thinks. I think you use business as an excuse to avoid feeling anything real. And I think you romanticize everything to avoid dealing with reality. My reality is that I'm married to a man who won't touch me, living in a penthouse that feels like a museum, pretending to be in love for strangers who don't matter. Which part of that should I not romanticize to make it bearable?" He moved closer, crowding her against the balcony railing. "You want me to touch you?" The question hung between them, charged with something dangerous. "That's not what I said. But it's what you meant." "No, I meant. You meant that you're 21 years old, married, and still untouched. You meant that you lie in that big bed at night wondering what it would be like if I came to your room. You meant that when I put my hand on your back tonight, you felt it everywhere." Her breath caught. "You're projecting." "Am I? You don't know what I think about at night. I know you watch me. When you think I'm not looking. I know your breathing changes when I'm close to you. I know you're not as immune to this arrangement as you pretend to be. Neither are you. I never claimed to be immune. Just controlled. What's the difference? Immune means you don't feel it. Controlled means you feel it but don't act on it. So you do feel something? I feel that you're dangerous. Me? I'm nobody. I'm the virgin bride you bought to avoid intimacy. You're the woman who sits with me through nightmares. Who challenges everything I say. Who looks at me like I'm a puzzle she's determined to solve. Are you? A puzzle? I'm a warning sign. Stay away. Danger ahead. What kind of danger? He leaned closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, feel his breath on her skin. The kind that would ruin us both. Maybe I want to be ruined. No, you don't. You want to be loved. There's a difference. How would you know what I want? Because despite everything, you still believe in fairy tales. You still think this arrangement might become something real. You still look at me and see potential instead of damage. I see both. Then you should know better than to want either. Should and do are different things. Iris, kiss me. The words hung between them like a lit match over gasoline. What? Kiss me. You're my husband. We're at a public event. People are probably watching through the windows. Kiss me like you mean it. That's not part of our arrangement. Neither is protecting me from your friends' insults. But you did that all night. That's different. How? That was about dignity. This is about desire. Maybe I desire dignity. Maybe being kissed by my husband in public would give me that. You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking for a kiss, not a kidney. You're asking me to cross a line I've drawn very clearly. You drew it. You can move it. If I kiss you. When? When you kiss me. You're very confident for a virgin. You're very scared for a billionaire. That did it. Something flashed in his eyes, challenge accepted, and then his mouth was on hers. It wasn't the brief, clinical kiss from their wedding. This was something else entirely. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her jaw as his lips moved against hers with a skill that made her knees weak. He kissed her like he was trying to prove a point, like he was claiming something, like he was angry and desperate and controlled all at once. When he pulled back, they were both breathing hard. There, he said, his voice rough. Dignified enough. That wasn't about dignity. No, he agreed. It wasn't. What was it about? Proving a point. What point? That you should be careful what you ask for. Maybe you should be careful what you deny yourself. I'm not denying myself anything. You're denying yourself everything. Iris. Mr. and Mrs. Kane. Jeffrey's voice boomed from the doorway. There you are? They're about to start the auction. The moment shattered. Nikolai stepped back, his mask sliding back into place so quickly it gave Iris whiplash. We'll be right in, he told Jeffrey. Young love? Jeffrey chuckled, winking at them before disappearing back inside. We should go in, Nikolai said, not looking at her. That's it. We kissed like that, and you just want to go back to the party. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go inside, bid on whatever overpriced nonsense they're auctioning, and pretend this didn't happen. It did happen. It was a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a moment of honesty. It was a mistake. The word hit like cold water. Iris straightened, pulling her dignity around her like armor. You're right. My mistake. Won't happen again. She walked past him into the ballroom, leaving him on the balcony with the taste of her still on his lips and the knowledge that he'd just hurt the one person who'd been nothing but kind to him. The rest of the evening was torture. They sat together at their table, playing perfect couple while the air between them crackled with unresolved tension. Iris smiled and chatted and bit on items she didn't want, all while feeling like her skin was too tight for her body. The ride home was silent. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent. The walk to their separate bedrooms was silent. Iris, Nikolai said as she reached her door. Good night, Nikolai. I'm sorry. She turned, surprised. He never apologized. For what? For kissing you. For saying it was a mistake. For all of it. Which part was the mistake? The kissing or the calling it a mistake? I don't know. Figure it out. Then apologize. She closed her door before he could respond, leaving him in the hallway with his confusion and regret. Inside her room, Iris touched her lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss. She'd asked for it, pushed for it, and gotten more than she'd bargained for. Because that kiss hadn't felt like a business arrangement or a performance for strangers. It had felt real and raw and dangerous in all the ways he'd warned her about. Comment below if you've ever kissed someone and knew it would change everything, even if you both pretended it wouldn't. Because that's what had just happened, and neither Iris nor Nikolai would ever be the same. The next morning, Iris found a note slipped under her door. I'm sorry for calling it a mistake. It wasn't. That's what makes it dangerous. She read it 3 times, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Then she walked to his office, where she knew he'd be despite it being Sunday. We need to talk, she said. He looked up from his laptop, and she could see he hadn't slept. About last night. About everything. This arrangement isn't working. Something like panic flashed across his face. You want to leave? No. I want to change the terms. What terms? The distance. The pretending. The acting like we don't affect each other. We agreed. We agreed to a business arrangement. But that kiss wasn't business. It was a momentary. If you say lapse in judgment again, I'm going to throw something at you. What do you want me to say? The truth. The truth is dangerous. You keep saying that. What are you so afraid of? I'm not afraid. You're terrified. Of feeling, of connection, of being human. What happened to you? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, you really want to know? Yes. It's not a pleasant story. I didn't expect it would be. He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. I grew up in Russia. Not the Moscow you see in movies, but the real Russia. The poor, desperate, violent parts. Your parents. My mother died when I was 8. Suicide, though they called it an accident. My father was not a good man. He worked for people who were even worse. The mafia? Something like that. He owed them money. When he couldn't pay, they took me as collateral. Took you. I was 12. They kept me for 3 years. The scars. Oh God, the scars she'd seen. Nikolai. They used me for whatever they needed. Running drugs, delivering messages, other things. Things that left marks, inside and out. How did you get away? I didn't. I survived until they got bored. Then they sold me to someone else. That's how I ended up in America. Trafficking, though they called it adoption on the paperwork. Your adopted family? We're looking for cheap labor, not a son. But they sent me to school to keep up appearances. I was smart, learned English fast, figured out that education was my way out. So you built your empire. I built my walls. Money is the ultimate wall. With enough of it, no one can touch you unless you let them. But walls keep things out and keep things in. That's the point. That's the tragedy. It's survival. You're not in survival mode anymore. You're safe. No one is ever safe. Security is an illusion people tell themselves so they can sleep at night. Is that why you have nightmares? Because you can't tell yourself that illusion? The nightmares are just memories with sharper teeth. In Russian, that's the language trauma speaks in my head. What do you dream about? Being powerless. Being owned. Being nothing but what someone else decides I am. Is that why you bought me? To own someone the way you were owned? No. The word came out sharp, almost angry. No, never that. Then why? Because you were clean. untouched by the ugliness I've lived in. You were like hope, that maybe I could have something pure without contaminating it. People aren't pure or contaminated. We're just people. You're pure. I'm a person who was sold to pay a debt. That's not pure. You sacrificed yourself for your family. That's the purest thing I've ever seen. It was just survival. Same as you. No, I survived for myself. You survived for others. There's a difference. The result is the same. We're both here, both damaged, both trying to figure out how to be human with each other. I don't know how to be human anymore. You were human when you kissed me. That was real. It was real, and that's why it scared you. It didn't scare me. Then do it again. Iris, do it again when no one's watching, when there's no excuse, when it's just us. That's not what you really want. How do you know what I want? Because what you want is love, and I can't give you that. I'm not asking for love. I'm asking for honesty. Honestly, I want you so badly it's eating me alive. I want to touch you, taste you, claim you in ways that would make you run screaming from this penthouse. I want to own you, possess you, keep you. But I also want to protect you, even from myself. Especially from myself. What if I don't want protection? You don't know what you're asking. Then show me. Iris, show me what I'm asking for. Let me decide if it's too much. He turned from the window, and the look in his eyes made her step back. Hunger and pain and desperate need all mixed into something that should have terrified her, but didn't. You want honesty? He asked, moving toward her slowly. Here's honesty. Every night since you moved in, I stand outside your door and fight the urge to come in. Every morning when I hear you singing in the shower, I imagine joining you. Every time you look at me with those innocent eyes, I want to corrupt you in the most beautiful ways. Then why don't you? Because once I start, I won't be able to stop. And you deserve better than a man who'll consume you. What if I want to be consumed? You don't know what that means. Then teach me. This isn't a game, Iris. I'm not playing. He was close now, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him. Last chance to run. I'm not running. You should be. Probably. Iris, stop talking and kiss me. This time when he kissed her, it was different. Slower, deeper, more deliberate. His hands tangled in her hair, holding her in place as he explored her mouth with a thoroughness that made her dizzy. She could taste his hunger, his control, the war between what he wanted and what he thought was right. When he pulled back, they were both shaking. Your room or mine? She asked. Neither. What? If we do this, we do it right. There's a right way to seduce your virgin wife. There's a right way to worship her. The word worship sent heat through her entire body. When? Tonight. After dinner. After we talk about what this means, what changes, what you need to understand. More talking. Consent requires understanding. You need to know what you're consenting to. I'm consenting to sex with my husband. You're consenting to crossing a line we can't uncross. Once we do this, everything changes. Everything's already changed. No. Right now we're still in neutral territory. We can still walk back. After tonight, if we do this, there's no walking back. I don't want to walk back. You might. I won't. We'll see. That evening was the longest of Iris's life. They had dinner, takeout Chinese eaten at the kitchen counter like normal people instead of the formal dining room that seated 12. They talked about safe things, her classes, his business deals, her mother's improving health. But underneath the normal conversation was an electric current of anticipation. Are you nervous? Nikolai asked as they cleaned up. Terrified. We don't have to. I want to. I'm just scared I'll disappoint you. Impossible. I don't know what I'm doing. That's what makes it perfect. How is inexperience perfect? Because everything will be new. Every touch, every sensation, every discovery. I get to be the one to show you pleasure for the first time. That's a lot of pressure. That's a privilege. What if I'm bad at it? Sex isn't a performance to be graded, says the man who treats everything like a business transaction. This isn't business. Then what is it? I don't know. That's what terrifies me. They stood there in the kitchen, two people on the edge of something irreversible. Your room, Iris said finally. I want to be in your space. Why? Because my room still feels like a guest room. Your room is where you have nightmares, where you're vulnerable. That's where I want to be. He led her there in silence, his hand in hers the only point of contact. His bedroom was exactly what she'd expected, masculine, minimal, expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a bed that could fit 5 people, everything in shades of black and gray. "It's very you," she said. "Cold and impersonal. Controlled and careful. Same thing." "Not really." He turned on music, something classical and complex that filled the silence without demanding attention. Then he stood there, looking at her like he was memorizing this moment. "What?" she asked. "I'm trying to decide where to start. Isn't there a usual order to these things?" "There's nothing usual about us." "Fair point. Can I undress you?" The question, formal and careful, made her shiver. "Yes." He moved behind her, his fingers finding the zipper of her dress. He lowered it slowly, his knuckles brushing her spine, making her gasp. "Sensitive," he murmured, sounding pleased. "Is that good?" "Everything about you is good." The dress pooled at her feet, leaving her in underwear she'd bought specifically for this possibility, white lace that had cost more than her old weekly grocery budget. "Beautiful," he said, his voice rough. "I feel exposed." "You are exposed. That's the point. To be seen, really seen, by someone who wants to memorize every inch of you. That's intense." "I'm an intense person. I've noticed." He turned her to face him, his hands framing her face. "We can stop anytime. Any moment you're uncomfortable, you say the word, and we stop." "What word?" "Stop" would work. "Very creative." "I'm not feeling creative right now." "What are you feeling?" "Like I'm about to destroy something precious. Or create something new." "Same thing sometimes." He kissed her then, different from before. This was patient, thorough, a kiss that promised time and attention and care. His hands explored carefully, her neck, her shoulders, the curve of her waist. Each touch was deliberate, cataloging her responses, learning what made her gasp, what made her press closer. "You're still dressed," she pointed out when they broke for air. "Yes." "That seems unfair." "Nothing about this is fair. You're giving me something you can never give anyone else. You're giving me something too." "What?" "The you underneath all that control." She reached for his shirt buttons, her fingers shaking slightly. He let her undress him, standing still as she revealed the body beneath the expensive clothes. The scars she'd glimpsed were worse in full light, a map of violence across his chest and back. "They're part of me," he said when she traced one gently. "They're part of your past." "Same thing." "No. Your past shaped you, but it doesn't define you." "Doesn't it?" "Not unless you let it." She kissed one of the scars, and he shuddered. "Iris, do you want me to stop?" "Never." What followed was a careful exploration of desire. Nikolai was patient, almost reverent, treating her body like something precious and breakable. He mapped every inch of her with hands and mouth, teaching her pleasure in increments, watching her face for any sign of discomfort. "Tell me what you want," he said. "I don't know what I want. I don't know the options." "Then tell me what feels good." "Everything. Everything feels good. Specific is better than general. You're such a CEO, even in bed." "I'm goal-oriented." "What's the goal?" "Your pleasure." "What about your pleasure?" "Your pleasure is my pleasure." "That's very evolved of you." "That's very selfish of me. I want to be the only one who's ever made you feel this way." "You are." "I want to be the only one who ever does." "That's the plan, right?" 2 years of marriage. Something flickered in his eyes. "Right. The plan." But plans, Iris was learning, had a way of changing when bodies and hearts got involved. Because what happened next wasn't part of any plan. It was Nikolai finally letting go of his legendary control, showing her what desire looked like when it wasn't leashed by fear. It was Iris discovering that her body was capable of feelings she'd only read about, that pleasure could be overwhelming and perfect and addictive. When they finally joined completely, Nikolai was so gentle she almost cried. He watched her face, reading every micro-expression, adjusting to her needs before she even knew what they were. "Are you okay?" he asked, still as stone while her body adjusted to the intrusion. It's a lot. Too much. No. Just intense. We can stop. Don't you dare." He laughed. Actually laughed, and the sound transformed his face. "Bossy in bed. I should have expected that. I'm bossy everywhere. I've noticed. Are you complaining?" "Never." What followed was a revelation. Iris had read about sex, heard about it, imagined it. But the reality was nothing like she'd expected. It was messier, more awkward, more laughing at weird sounds and repositioning and checking in with each other. But it was also more intimate, more consuming, more everything than she'd imagined possible. "Oh, She gasped when everything suddenly clicked, when the awkwardness transformed into rhythm and the discomfort became pleasure. Oh, that's, I know. How did I not know my body could do this? Because you needed someone to show you. And you're that someone? I'm the only someone. The possessiveness in his voice should have bothered her. Instead, it sent heat through her entire body. Yes, she agreed. The only. When release finally claimed her, it was with an intensity that made her cry out, clutching at Nikolai like he was the only solid thing in a world gone liquid. He followed her over, her name on his lips like a prayer or a curse or both. Afterward, they lay tangled together, skin cooling, breathing slowly returning to normal. So, Iris said finally, that's sex. That's sex with someone who worshipped you. Is that what you did? Worshipped me? What else would you call it? Making love. I don't know how to make love. I only know how to worship or consume. Maybe they're the same thing. They're really not. Which did you do tonight? Both. Neither. Something new. I like new. So do I. That's the problem. Why is it a problem? Because new becomes old. Exciting becomes routine. And then what? Then we find new ways to be new. That's not how it works. How do you know? You've never tried. I've never tried because I know how it ends. With happiness. With disappointment. With boredom. With two people who can't remember why they wanted each other in the first place. That's depressing. That's realistic. No, that's fear talking. Maybe fear is smart. Fear is just fear. It keeps you safe, but it also keeps you from living. I am living. No, you're existing. There's a difference. Not in my experience. Your experience is limited. My experience is extensive. Your experience is with women who wanted your money or your status. I don't want either. What do you want? You. The real you. The one who has nightmares and scars and reads contracts for fun. The one who kisses like he's drowning and makes love like he's worshiping. The one who's terrified of feeling but feels anyway. That person doesn't exist. He does. I just spent the night with him. That was. If you say it was a mistake or a lapse in judgment, I swear I'll smother you with this pillow. I was going to say it was unexpected. Good unexpected or bad unexpected? I don't know yet. How can you not know? Because I've never felt this before. I don't have a reference point. Felt what? Like I want to keep you. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. The contract is for 2 years, Iris reminded him. Contracts can be amended. Are you suggesting we amend ours? I'm suggesting we see what happens. That's very non-specific for someone who likes clear terms. Clear terms don't work with unclear feelings. So you admit you have feelings? I admit I have something. Something is better than nothing. Sometimes nothing is safer. Safe is overrated, says the virgin who just lost her virginity to a man who bought her. You didn't buy me. You saved my family. Same thing. Not really. One is a transaction, the other is a sacrifice. Which did I do? Both. You sacrificed your solitude to save my family. That's a generous interpretation. That's the true interpretation. Truth is subjective. No, truth is truth. We just tell ourselves stories to make it more palatable. What story are you telling yourself about tonight? That my husband made love to me for the first time and it changed everything. And what story am I telling myself? That you can control this. That you can have me physically but stay emotionally distant. That you can compartmentalize what just happened into some safe box that doesn't threaten your walls. That's very specific. Am I wrong? No, but I don't think it's working. The compartmentalizing, any of it. The distance, the control, the walls. You're destroying all of it just by existing. Good. It's not good. It's terrifying. Terrifying can be good. Terrifying is never good. It is when it leads to growth. I don't want to grow. I want to stay safe. No, you don't. If you wanted safe, you wouldn't have married a virgin. You would have stayed alone. I couldn't stay alone. The will. You could have married anyone. You chose me. Morrison suggested you. And you agreed. What? Because you seemed safe. Do I seem safe now? No. You seem like the most dangerous thing that's ever happened to me. Good. Why is that good? Because dangerous means you care. Dangerous means I matter. Dangerous means this is real. Real doesn't last. Nothing lasts. That doesn't mean it's not worth having. That's very philosophical for someone who just had sex for the first time. Sex makes me philosophical. Most people it makes sleepy. I'm not most people. No, he agreed, pulling her closer. You're definitely not. They stayed awake talking until dawn, their bodies intertwined, sharing stories they'd never told anyone else. Nikolai told her about the first time he'd made money legally, a coding job at 16 that paid more than his adopted parents made in a month. Iris told him about finding her father passed out at a casino, about having to drag him home and lie to her mother about where he'd been. "We're both broken," she said as the sun painted the bedroom gold. "Maybe broken people fit together better. Like puzzle pieces? Like shattered glass that makes a mosaic. That's poetic. That's probably sleep deprivation. We should sleep. We should." But neither moved. They lay there watching the city wake up, both knowing that everything had changed and neither quite ready to face what that meant. "Nikolai." "Yes." "What happens now?" "I don't know." "That's not very CEO of you. You've destroyed my inner CEO." "Good." He was annoying. He was safe. Safe is overrated. "Yes, you've mentioned. It bears repeating." "Iris." "Yes." "Thank you." "For what?" "For not running when you should have." "I'm too stubborn to run." "Good. Besides, where would I go? You've ruined me for normal people." "Have I?" "Completely. No regular person is going to compare to a traumatized Russian billionaire with control issues." That's a ringing endorsement. "It's the truth. Your truth. The only truth that matters to me." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and nothing like the desperate hunger of the night before. This was a morning kiss, a promise kiss, a kiss that said maybe 2 years wasn't enough time after all. When they finally slept, it was wrapped around each other like they'd been doing it for years instead of hours. And when Nikolai's nightmares came, Iris was already there, already holding him, already whispering that he was safe. He was home. He was loved. He didn't wake up. For the first time in 3 years, he slept through the night. That should have been their happily ever after. The virgin bride and the cold CEO, finding love in the strangest circumstances. But life, especially life paid for by lies and contracts, is never that simple. The call came 3 days later, while they were having breakfast like a normal couple instead of what they actually were. "Mr. Kane." The voice on the phone was professionally neutral. "This is Harrison Webb from the SEC. We need to discuss some irregularities in your recent acquisition of Pembroke Industries." Nikolai's face went pale. "What kind of irregularities?" "The kind that could result in federal charges. We'll need you to come in for questioning. Today. I'll bring my lawyer. Bring several. You're going to need them." He hung up and looked at Iris, who was watching him with concern. "What's wrong?" "Everything. The life I built, the walls I constructed, the fortune I accumulated, it's all about to come crashing down." "What are you talking about?" "The SEC. They're investigating me for fraud." "Did you commit fraud?" "Not recently. But previously? The foundation of my entire empire is built on something that wasn't entirely legal." "Entirely illegal?" "Legal adjacent." "Nikolai." I know. The virgin bride discovers her husband is actually a criminal. It's very gothic novel. "What did you do?" "I survived. By any means necessary." "That's not an answer. When I was 18, fresh out of my adopted family's house, I had nothing. No money, no connections, no legitimate path to success. But I had skills, coding, manipulation, the ability to become whoever people needed me to be. And I used those skills to steal. Not money directly, but information, corporate secrets, insider trading tips, things that could be sold to the highest bidder." "That's how you built your fortune?" "That's how I started it. Once I had enough, I went legitimate. Every deal since has been completely legal. But the foundation is rotten." "Yes. What happens if they prove it?" "I lose everything. The money, the company, possibly my freedom." "Prison?" "Probably." "For how long?" 5 to 10 years, depending on what they can prove." Iris sat back, processing this. The man she'd married, the man she'd given her virginity to, the man she was starting to love, might be going to prison. "What about our contract?" she asked. "Voided by my incarceration, I'd imagine. So I'd be free?" "Completely. The debt forgiveness would stand. That's already processed. But you'd be free to divorce me, move on, pretend this never happened." "What if I don't want to be free?" "Iris, you don't understand. If I go to prison, then I'll visit you. For 10 years. For as long as it takes." "That's insane. That's love." The word hung between them like a confession. "You don't love me," Nikolai said quietly. You love the idea of fixing me. I love the reality of you. The broken, criminal, traumatized reality. That's Stockholm Syndrome. That's choice. I choose you, Nikolai. Even if you're a criminal. Even if you go to prison. Even if we only get moments instead of years. Why? Because you're mine. My husband, my lover, my complicated disaster of a person. And I don't give up on what's mine. I'm not worth that loyalty. You are to me. Iris, go to your meeting. See what they have. Then we'll figure out next steps. We. That's what marriage means. Facing things together. Even federal charges? Especially federal charges. He kissed her, hard and desperate. You're insane. I'm your wife. Same thing apparently. He left for the meeting that would determine their future, and Iris was left in the penthouse that might not be theirs much longer, thinking about how quickly life could change. A month ago, she'd been a virgin bride sold to save her family. Now she was in love with a possible criminal who might spend the next decade in federal prison. Comment below if you've ever discovered the person you love might not be who you thought they were, but love them anyway. Because that's where Iris found herself, and the choice she made next would shock everyone, including Nikolai. The meeting with the SEC lasted 9 hours. When Nikolai finally returned to the penthouse, he looked like he'd aged 5 years. Well, Iris asked, they have everything. Every transaction, every deal, every illegal moment from when I was 18 to 21. How? Someone gave it to them. Someone who's been collecting evidence for years. Who? Natasha, the woman from the gala. The ex-lover who'd wanted more than Nikolai could give. She kept records. She kept everything. Apparently, when I ended things 3 years ago, she decided to destroy me. She's been gathering evidence ever since. Why now? Because she saw us at the gala. Saw how I looked at you. Realized I was capable of feeling something for someone, just not for her. So she's destroying you out of jealousy? Hell hath no fury and all that. What are your options? Cooperate and get 5 years. Fight and risk 10. Or. There is no or. There's always an or. You're just not seeing it yet. Iris, this isn't a problem that can be solved. This is consequences finally catching up. When do you have to decide? They're giving me a week to get my affairs in order. Then I either surrender myself or they arrest me publicly. A week. Not much time for a honeymoon phase. We'll make it count. How are you so calm? Because panicking won't help. And because I meant what I said. I choose you, consequences and all. You could have a normal life. Divorce me now, claim you didn't know, walk away clean. I don't want clean. I want you. Even if I'm behind bars. Even then. You'd wait 10 years? I'd wait forever. That's dramatic. That's true. That night, they made love like the world was ending, because in a way, it was. Their strange, contracted world was about to be destroyed by truth and consequences. But in the destruction, something real was being born. Run away with me, Nikolai said suddenly, both of them breathless and tangled in sheets. What? I have money hidden offshore. We could disappear. New names, new country, new life. That's not who you are. It's who I could be. For you. I don't want you to be someone else for me. I want you to be yourself. Myself is about to be a federal prisoner. Then be that. Be honest about who you were and who you're becoming. You make it sound simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. Nothing about this is easy. The best things never are. They spent the week like newlyweds and death row inmates combined. Desperate touching, careful planning, and more honesty than either had managed in their entire lives before each other. I need you to have power of attorney, Nikolai said, pushing papers across the breakfast table. Control of whatever assets don't get frozen. I don't want your money. It's not about want. It's about practicality. You'll need resources while I'm gone. I can work. You can also have security. Please, Iris. Let me take care of you the only way I'll be able to. She signed the papers, hating every stroke of the pen. There's something else, he said. The night terrors. They'll be worse in prison. Without you there. Then I'll have to make sure you remember I'm waiting. How? Letters. Every day. Phone calls when they allow. Visits every week. That's a lot of commitment to a criminal. That's a normal amount of commitment to a husband. We're not normal. No, we're extraordinary. Which means we'll survive this extraordinarily. The day before he was due to surrender, they had a visitor. Iris answered the door to find an elderly man in an expensive suit, looking like money and judgment had a baby. You must be the virgin bride, he said without preamble. I'm Iris Kane. And you are? Alexander Volkov, Nikolai's grandfather. The grandfather whose will had started all of this. The requirement for marriage that had brought them together. He's not here, Iris lied. Yes, I am, Nikolai said from behind her. Hello, grandfather. Nikolai, I heard about your troubles. Come to gloat. Come to offer a solution. There is no solution. There's always a solution if you're willing to pay the price. What price? Give up the company. Sign it over to me. In exchange, I make the federal charges disappear. You can't make federal charges disappear. I can when I have evidence that Natasha fabricated most of her proof. What? She did steal some real documents, yes, but she embellished. Added transactions that never happened. Forged evidence to make it worse than it was. How do you know? Because I paid her to do it. The silence that followed was deafening. You what? Nikolai's voice was deadly quiet. I needed to test you. To see if you'd become the man I hoped, or remain the boy I feared. By destroying my life? By seeing what you'd do when everything was stripped away. Would you run? Would you lie? Would you sacrifice others to save yourself? This was all a test. Everything is a test. And did I pass? You were ready to go to prison rather than run. You told the truth rather than lie. And you married for love rather than convenience, despite what you might claim. I'm married to inherit. You married her specifically. The virgin, the innocent, the one person who could crack your walls. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise. So what now? You make this go away and I owe you. I make this go away and you keep the company. On one condition. Which is, you stay married to her. Really married. Not this contracted nonsense you've been playing at. How did you? I know everything, Nikolai. The contract, the separate bedrooms that recently became one, the ridiculous plan to divorce in 2 years. Stay married, build a real family, or lose everything. That's manipulation. That's motivation. Iris doesn't deserve to be trapped. I'm not trapped, Iris said, finding her voice. I choose this. Alexander looked at her with something like approval. You'll do. Strong enough to handle him, soft enough to heal him. Yes, you'll do nicely. I'm not a broodmare you're approving. No, you're the woman who's going to save my grandson from himself. Worth far more than a broodmare. This is insane, Nikolai said. This is family, Alexander corrected. Messy, complicated, sometimes criminal, but family. Do we have a deal? I need to discuss with my wife. You have 1 hour. Then I make the call either way. After he left, Nikolai and Iris stood in their living room, processing what had just happened. He orchestrated all of this, Nikolai said. The investigation, the charges, probably even Natasha's involvement. To test you. To control me. Or to save you. Same thing with him. Is it though? He's offering you a way out. With strings. Everything has strings. At least these ones lead somewhere good. You want to stay married to me? Really married, not contracted. I want to stay married to you regardless. This just makes it easier. You could be free. If I go to prison, you could divorce me and move on. I don't want to be free. I want to be yours. Even knowing everything. The crimes, the manipulation, the grandfather who's apparently a puppet master. Especially knowing everything. I love you, Nikolai. Not the idea of you. Not the money. Not the lifestyle. You. The broken, criminal, nightmare having you. That's insane. That's love. I don't know how to love. You've been loving me since the day you had my mother treated by the best doctors. You just called it business. That was love. It was love disguised as transaction. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you have me anyway. For 2 years. Forever, if you'll have me. Forever is a long time. Not long enough. He kissed her then, and it felt like a promise, a vow more real than the ones they'd exchanged at their wedding. Call your grandfather, Iris said. Take the deal. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He'll expect children. Real marriage means heirs in his world. Then we'll give him heirs. You want children? With me? I want everything with you. Even the nightmares. Especially the nightmares. They're part of you. You're insane. I'm your wife. Really your wife now. My wife. He repeated, like he was tasting the words for the first time. Mine. Yours, she agreed. Always. The call to Alexander was brief. Deal accepted. Charges would disappear. The marriage would be real and permanent. Welcome to the family, Alexander said to Iris before hanging up. May God help you. That night, as they lay in bed that had become theirs rather than his, Iris asked, "Are you disappointed that you don't get your dramatic prison sentence?" "I'm relieved. And terrified." "Why terrified?" "Because prison would have been easier than this." "Then what?" "Then learning to be a real husband. A real person. A real part of something bigger than my own survival." "You'll figure it out." "How do you know?" "Because you have me. And I'm very good at fixing broken things." "I'm not a thing." "No, you're my husband. My real, permanent, complicated husband. Your criminal husband. Reformed criminal. Reforming. Same thing. Iris." "Yes. Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. That's what love does." "Is it?" "It is when it's real. This is real. This is the realest thing either of us has ever had." "That's terrifying." "That's perfect." And it was. Not perfect in the fairy tale sense, but perfect in the real sense. Two broken people who fit together in all their jagged edges. A virgin bride who wasn't a virgin anymore. A cold CEO who was learning to feel. A contracted marriage that had become real. An arrangement that had become love. The federal charges disappeared as promised. Alexander had been thorough. Not only was the falsified evidence exposed, but Natasha found herself under investigation for fraud and extortion. She fled the country before charges could be filed, but not before sending Nikolai a single text. "She'll leave you too, when she sees what you really are." "She's wrong," Iris said, reading over his shoulder. "How do you know?" "Because I've already seen what you really are. And I'm still here. What am I really? Mine." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters." 6 months later, at their real wedding, the one they chose, not the one contracted, Iris walked down the aisle in a dress she'd picked herself, toward a man she'd chosen despite everything, because of everything. "Do you take this man?" the officiant asked, "knowing all that he is and all that he's been?" "I do. Every broken piece of him." "And do you take this woman, knowing she's the only person who truly sees you?" "I do. And thank God for it." They kissed, and it wasn't the brief touch of their first wedding or the desperate hunger of their early discoveries. It was the kiss of two people who'd been through hell and chosen heaven anyway. "I love you," Nikolai whispered against her lips. "I know. That's very Han Solo of you. You watch Star Wars? You were watching it last week." "I was watching you watch it." "That's creepy." "That's love. Same thing sometimes. Only with us." "Only with us," she agreed. And that was their truth. A marriage that started as a sale, a wedding night where nothing happened, and a love that grew from the impossible. The virgin bride and the cold CEO, who turned out to be neither, who turned out to be exactly what the other needed. They had 3 children eventually. All of them learned early that love wasn't clean or simple or easy. It was messy and complicated and required choosing each other every day, especially on the days when choosing seemed impossible. "Tell us again," their daughter would demand, years later. "Tell us how you and Daddy met." And Iris would tell them. The whole story, edited for age appropriateness. About debt and desperation, about contracts and choices, about a wedding night where the unthinkable happened. 2 people saw each other clearly and chose to stay anyway. "That's a weird story," their son would say. "The best stories are," Nikolai would respond, pulling Iris close. "Why?" the children would ask. "Because weird means real. And real is always better than perfect. Even when real is hard. Especially then." And that was the lesson. Not that love conquered all, or that marriage was sacred, or that virginity was special. The lesson was that 2 people could start with nothing real between them and build something true. That contracts could become covenants. That arrangement could become love. The virgin bride who wasn't really sold, but sort of was. The cold CEO who wasn't really cold, but had to learn to thaw. The wedding night where nothing happened except everything changed. Their story, weird and wonderful and entirely theirs. Forever and unexpectedly real. The end.